Can I say, first of all, thank you very much indeed for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to follow you, because what I am going to say actually resonates, what you have said. Because when I was asked to come and speak, it was left to me, and I said I wanted to talk about salience of cultural democracy in the modern world. That was some months ago, and if anything, the salience has increased. So if I repeat some of the things you said, I think they're worth actually repeating. Because we know that the world order has never been free of turbulence. But what feels distinctive today is the combination of scale and multiple pressures bearing down at once, alongside a growing sense that the international rules-based order, the framework that has underpinned stability for decades, is steadily eroded, and in some places is being actively tested. So I think we meet at a time where there's a pronounced geopolitical strain. And power is more diffuse, exercised by a wide range of state and non-state actors. Assumptions that once shaped alliances and cooperation are being re-examined. And influence is no longer exercised through diplomacy alone, but through energy, supply chains, finance, sanctions, cyberspace, and information flows. And the result is a much more crowded, more volatile world with fewer shared points of reference. And conflict, too, I think, has become more persistent. It's got some measured not only in statistics, but in human lives. Communities fractured, families displaced, futures placed on hold. And what is most unsettling is not simply the scale of suffering, but the way it erodes confidence in peace itself, normalizing devastation and shrinking the space in which politics can do anything other than react. In such conditions, trust between people and nations is harder to sustain. Cooperation unravels very easily, and anger is readily exploited, mobilized by those who benefit from division and the international cooperation itself. But yet, as we heard earlier, at the same time, we live in an extraordinary age of connection. Ideas travel instantly. Voices once excluded can now be heard across borders. Billions of people, not only governments and great institutions, can create, share, collaborate at speed. And we are exposed to more than one another than ever before, and yet often less certain how to engage with patience and care, across cultures, across histories, across values. We live then with something of a paradox, which is unprecedented connection, and yet a deficit of trust precisely at the moment is most required. So it is in that space, I think, between connection and understanding that cultural democracy comes into its own. And I talk about what I call authentic cultural diplomacy, and it's about bridge building, engagement with mutual respect, influence through attraction rather than coercion. It is engagement which resonates with human values and a whole way of life. And it's not a forum for trading interests or just negotiating advantage, but as the disciplined practice of human empathy, the patient work of listening, learning, and making true cooperation possible through mutual understanding. And the word mutual is important. So let me offer you 3 principles from the flow of that paradox. The principles that explain why cultural diplomacy, in my view, is not an extra optional, as you said, but a practical necessity in a world we now inhabit. It's a practical necessity. The first principle is, of course, democracy, in my view, depends on shared listening. Democracy is more than just laws and elections. It endures through civic spaces, places where disagreement can be held within a common public discourse, where citizens continue to recognize one another across difference, and where conflict does not dissolve the bonds between us. It is within these civic spaces that shared meaning takes place. And it is shared meaning, which is fragile, contested, and continually renewed, that allows society to withstand their most difficult moments. So intercultural dialogue matters here because it encourages the practice of seeing the world through another's eyes. Through exchange across difference, it nurtures the habits on which democratic life depends, that is, listening with care, disagreeing agreeably, and holding complexity with confidence. But we know that civic spaces are under strain, not because disagreement is new, but because our attention is being increasingly fragmented. We are surrounded by platforms, algorithms that reward what is loud, familiar, and certain, and nudging us to take sides and retreat into narrower circles, and speak past one another rather than with one another. So when the public life fragments in this way, the common ground on which democratic life depends begins to erode, and shared meaning is lost within us. And this applies not just internationally, I think this also applies domestically to societies which are trying to be truly multicultural. Now, the second principle is the shared meaning depends on trust. Trust, as we know, is earned slowly but lost quickly, within communities, within nations alike. Its endurance depends on standards, consistency, and independence that reach beyond headlines and electoral cycles. Of course, human people-to-people connections matter, as was stated earlier, but institutions matter here because they are able to build, hold, and carry trust over time, anchoring civic life at home and sustaining credibility abroad. And I think this respect has already been mentioned. In the UK, we are fortunate. We are home to cultural institutions that have earned trust over many decades through their reliability and clear public purpose. As a public service broadcaster, BBC helps our diverse society remain in conversation with itself. At its best, it provides shared reference points, grounds debate in verifiable facts, and creates spaces for disagreement without losing the thread of common life. And internationally, the BBC World Service is listened to across the globe because its credibility has been patiently earned through editorial independence, unparalleled linguistic reach, and sustained engagement, including its fragile and contested information environments. And therefore, I think it's no surprise the BBC has undergone attack from outside forces, and therefore we have to defend the BBC very forcefully. Alongside this, the British Council carries out the complementary work of cultural diplomacy with depth and quiet assurance. As you heard, I was involved with the British Council. It builds enduring partnerships in education and language, enables cultural collaboration, brings artists, universities, civil society, and young people into sustained contact over time. Where the World Service offers a trusted point of reference, the British Council builds confidence through presence, through continuity, reciprocity, and very patient work of keeping human connections alive. Now I come to the third principle, which is that cultural diplomacy succeeds with exchange turns understanding into cooperation. If shared meaning holds societies together, trust holds institutions and allows that meaning to endure. When exchange is how both move beyond our own borders, it is through sustained human encounter and not transactions alone that understanding deepens and cooperation becomes possible. The qualities that make cooperation durable, such as dignity, legitimacy, mutual respect, cannot be negotiated in trade deals or imposed. They are earned slowly and need to be renewed over time. Cultural diplomacy, I would argue, is the discipline of that work, keeping nations, peoples connected through shared human experience. Even when agreement is difficult, formal political channels reach their limits. In an increasingly unstable world, security must be delivered through more than one means. There are moments that require boots on the ground, which force deterrence when force or deterrence is unavoidable to protect fundamental human rights. But softer boots with patient dialogue and cultural exchange is equally important. This is why I think investment in military capability, necessary as it is and is currently being argued for, must be matched by sustained commitment to cultural institutions. They are not an adornment to foreign policy. They reduce risk, absorb shocks, and prevent misunderstanding from becoming conflict, anchoring security not only in capability, but in legitimacy and human connection. So let me end by restating the logic plainly. Shared meaning makes society coherent, trust makes it credible, and exchange is how credibility becomes cooperation beyond our borders. And this is why this forum matters, because cultural diplomacy does not begin with a communique. It begins earlier in the steady practice of intercultural dialogue, and I would argue that as borders harden, politics polarize, cultural diplomacy is the lifeline, a reminder of our humanity, which is something we must be cherished and must be invested in on an equal footing as we do for military. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.